Happy Thursday. Would we like to go ahead and get started? I'm just checking to make sure we've got everybody. All right. Okay, well, good morning. I'm Abby Olson. I'm one of the co-leaders of the steering committee with my partner, Jamie Legates, on the call. And then Travis Gregg is out on paternity leave. Congrats to him and his family. And then we also have Emily from Unite Us, and she's on vacation. So I'm gonna just ask for your grace today. I'm sitting in my car outside a state meet. So I have to have my windows down a little bit here, or I'm gonna die out in the car. So we want to thank you all for joining us. I recognize all your faces, and I know that many of you have already been very supportive to the collaborative so far. And so we wanted to bring you in today and just kind of start working on giving a background of where we've been, where we hope to go, and kind of center around this new group of partners here. So I was wondering if we wanted to take just a few minutes and go around and have everyone in the room introduce themselves and share why you're interested in this work and maybe what agency you are associated with. So I think I'll go from my screen here. So Nicole Hirsch, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm Nicole Hirsch. I work for Health and Human Services. I have been working in child welfare for 17 years now. It seems like it's getting to be a big number.
Awesome.
But obviously I've kind of dedicated my career to that. And I just feel like the collaborative has a huge impact and kind of lines up with my passion with child welfare. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
That's great. We're happy to have you here. All right. Sarah McNeil.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm with New York Life, but mostly I just really enjoy volunteering in the community. I believe strong people make strong communities, and the more we can help people, the stronger it all gets. So that was an overuse of the word strong, but there we are.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. All right, Cheyenne.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cheyenne Adams, and I'm the prevention coordinator at Region 3 Behavioral Health Services. I was on this committee because Tiffany, once upon a time, kind of started on this, but she is really busy with other meetings, so I am her replacement, but I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. We're glad to have you here. Alexandra.
Good morning, I'm Alexandra Dillon, Early Learning Connection Coordinator. I office out of ESU 10 in Kearney, and I am on this call. I've worked with the Communities for Kids grant projects and Rooted in Relationships. And so just trying to understand more about what the need is and how I can support it.
Great, thank you. All right, my next screen says Buffalo Community Partner staff. I can see a few people in the room. Good.
I can start. My name is Marta Marfileño. I'm the Bilingual Central Navigator at Buffalo County Community Partners.
Okay.
I'm Oriana Lindsay. I am the Behavioral Health Coordinator Assistant.
Great.
And I'm Wanda Fedorczyk with Buffalo County Community Partners, and obviously, and I'm the Central Navigator, and I do prevention work as well.
Okay. And Matt and Michelle, would you guys like to introduce yourself? Sorry.
Yeah, hey everybody, Matt Morris with Community Partners as well. I'm here obviously because it's part of my job, but I have said job because I enjoy living in Kearney and I want to make it a better place for ourselves and the community as a whole.
Great.
And Michelle Toucan, Marketing Coordinator, Operations Team with my co-star, real star, Matt Morris. We're kind of the behind the scenes work here. So we're running PowerPoint and recording and stuff for this meeting. And it's one of my favorite ones to be a part of. I love just the leadership
and the collaboration of this steering group. So thanks, Abby.
Wonderful. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the staff at Community Partners for getting us together, and all of that behind the scenes work really means a lot. So, okay. My next one is Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Shoholm. I am the Early Learning Connection Coach Consultant out of ESU 10. So my colleague is the great Alexandra Dillon. And my role is just really coaching different coaches in the initiatives in early childhood throughout the central region of the state. So my presence here pretty much aligns with what we're trying to do. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining. All right, Jamie, can you share your role?
I'm Jamie Legates. I work at Families Care. I'm the assistant director here. I'm a co-team lead, whatever we're calling it. I guess I identify as a parent and an individual who has lived experience in the behavioral health system of care. That's what my work revolves around. I'm a certified peer support specialist, and I supervise our peer support staff here at Families Care.
Great.
Excited about this team.
Okay.
Thank you guys all for being here.
Thank you. All right, Dulce.
I'm Dulce Valdez with ESU 9. I'm the Migrant Project Coordinator for the region. I also serve a few other roles in the community. So I'm representing ESU 9, but I also have other roles such as LMHP, Compass, and then a mother, just like she is. So I'm just a concerned person for the well-being of youth in general and children.
Great. Thank you for your role.
Okay.
All right, Chandra.
Hi, I'm Chandra Diaz, and I work at UNK. I'm also a board member of this group, and I come to this work because I love volunteering in the community and also really care about marginalized communities.
Thank you. Tana. Sorry, I missed you the first round.
That's all right. Tana Miller, Behavioral Health Coordinator at Community Partners.
Wonderful. And then I see that Denise is on the phone as well.
Good morning, everyone. This is Denise Sweener, traveling down Interstate 80 with Buffalo County Community Partners.
All right, thank you. All right, I hope I got everyone. Did I miss anyone? Okay, wonderful. Thank you all again for taking the time to be here today. And it sounds like we all have definitely connections to this work. So we appreciate that. So wanted to kind of share with you here a little bit about the meeting as well, as you can follow along on the slides. And bear with me, I'm learning just alongside with you all. So I hope I can do justice sharing all the work that brought us all here today. So, so the first thing I wanted to share is just kind of where we have been, and kind of then the historical piece here. So basically what we're trying to do here is build a 2030 vision as a community with amongst all our partners. And so to develop a community vision, basically the Buffalo County invited 60 plus community stakeholders to the table to review community data that was available, and also to prioritize over 33 sets of population data that was of interest for us to track. So lots of data review to kind of set our baseline. This body of work was then named the Buffalo County Health and Wellness Indicators. And next, these 60 plus community members were asked like what their hopes were for the community. And so basically all this work took place over a 6-month period of time of bringing people together to the table. And by the time we were able to hear the voices and match up with the data and the indicators, a list of gaps and challenges were collected. and arranged around 4 common themes. We are trying to move from having more of an isolated impact model where I guess in my line of work, we kind of call it silos, that we're all working really hard in so many areas, but we're not collectively making an impact. And so if we can come together to basically to bring all of the relevant stakeholders together to work on the same goal and measure the same things, we will have much better alignment across the across all of the sectors. So as you can see there, they're all very smart professionals that we definitely know the difference between isolated and collective. So we want to make sure we're coordinating our actions, sharing our lessons learned, and trying to decrease any duplication of efforts. So that way we can all sustain the resources that we have, whether those are human resources or financial resources. So any questions on that at this point? Okay, I don't see any. Stop me if so. Okay, so how will we measure the impact? This is a very important part that, you know, if Travis were here, that's one thing I'm learning about Travis that I respect, is that we do have to measure the work that we're doing. So these are kind of the 4 cross sectors here of how we want to measure that. So how much service did we actually deliver? How well did we deliver it, which is a quality factor? How much change did we produce, which is the effect factor? And then what quality of change did we produce? So basically the question we want to ask is, anyone better off with the work that we did? Okay. So we definitely want to talk about the factors that those indicators that we're talking about. So we want to center around kind of these big 4 areas. If you've been on any of the other calls before, you've seen what I call the flower petal, which I really like, and kind of is a physical representation of the work. Thank you. That's awesome. So here's the impacts. We want to impact the behavioral health world, vulnerable populations, children and youth, which is why you all are here today, and access. And as you can see, all 4 of those collaboratively work together. So that's where our goal is. So hopefully that gives you kind of a centering of where we've been and what we're trying to do. So as you can see there on the screens, our work is really grounded in these impact statements here. This is where we want to focus our work. So we want to be able to increase access to information and resources, as well as trainings, programs, services to anyone that is in this, within this, these work groups. We also want to prevent persons across their developmental stages. So starting with children and youth, adolescents, all the way up to working adults and older adults, from entering or potentially re-entering the system. So kind of to summarize that, by 2030, Buffalo County, what we really would like to sorry, making poor, you guys are trying to keep up with me. Right here is kind of where we want to focus our vision. We would like to be able to say by 2030 that that we will have resources that are easy to understand and are accessible for all. Accessibility and being able to understand those resources is extremely important. We will have access to basic services for all residents. We will thrive when partners work together to coordinate services. So going away from what I call the survival mode to thriving. And then we will value all people in our communities and their voices to inform our work. So I think it's important that we know that we have this grounding to get us started. Let me think if there's anything else that I've potentially missed, team. again, we want to find innovative ways to solve some of the complex problems that we're facing in our communities and our county. And so basically, just to kind of summarize all the work groups, I think maybe this has been hard to understand, but we do have a collaborative that is made up of over 100 plus community members and stakeholders. They're from 12 different community sectors. The Buffalo County Community Partners Board is really our backbone to all of this work. They're the reason that we are here. They are supporting us in more ways than you can physically and visibly see. And then we developed this steering committee. So that way this steering committee can provide support and focus on community accountability. So this is kind of the visual of what we're trying to do here.
Abby, this is Denise. I don't know if you can hear me okay. The only other piece I think I would add to bring some conversations around results-based accountability.
Yes.
So one of the pieces that I think we could share as an example is in that flower leaf of children, adolescents, and young adults. We have several coalitions that are working in that space. So we have Rooted in Relationships. I heard that mentioned. We have Positive Pressure. We have opioid prevention. We have a lot of coalitions that we would say are really in that leaf of the flower or that petal of the flower. They have been over time doing fantastic work. So when you look at the results-based accountability, it's 3 questions. The first question is, how much did we do? So how many prescription drugs have we collected in the spring and in the fall? And we can count that, we can congratulate ourselves, we can celebrate that because we know we're making a difference with the number of prescription drugs we're taking off the street, which is reducing that access to overdoses. Then the next question is, we ask ourselves, how well did we do it? So where's our location? How do people know about us? How well is the process set up? Just really taking an overall quality approach to the work that we're doing. The third question is really why we're all doing this. The third question is anybody better off? So if we were to ask ourselves, because of the work that we're doing around prescription drug takebacks, how do we know that we are truly reducing overdoses in Buffalo County? So if you lay that same question process over early childhood, so if you started to say, with the coaching model, we can count the number of coaching hours, we can count the number of providers that we are coaching, we can talk about how well we're doing it, we can survey the coaches. Then we begin to ask ourselves the question, how do we know that those behaviors that we're coaching are really truly helping people in the long run and preventing them from prescription overdoses or preventing them from early onset of some of the mental health behaviors? So you begin to kind of ask yourself some of those questions, and that's why we have early childhood people at this table, why we have people working in adolescence, and why we're inviting people with youth and young adults, because we're wanting to start that conversation about this lifelong prevention system. And until we can start answering that question, is anybody better off? That's where we want to go. How do we prevent people from entering the system? How do we increase access to resources, trainings, etc.? So hopefully that was a little bit helpful. I think we're getting a little bit more traction as we're talking about that. So I just wanted to bring that a little bit more to the forefront, because I think some of you are trying to kind of figure out what that means and why you're at the table. So hopefully that's helpful.
I greatly appreciate you jumping in and sharing that at more details. So you guys have so much experience with this that it's great for us all to learn about that. So, okay. Michelle, Matt, do you feel like I missed anything else?
You did a great job, Abby.
Okay.
Great review. I think we're ready to move forward if there's no other questions. And thanks, Denise. That was helpful to bring it back to the results-based accountability. And I can send these slides out. I had somebody ask about that if you guys are interested in seeing some more of this information.
Okay. All right, so now here's the futuristic piece. So here's where we want to be, you know, in a year from now. These are the things that we want to be asking ourselves, and hopefully feeling proud to have accomplished them. So as you can see here, it's extremely important for us to share the mission and the work that we're doing with other community members. We want to make sure that we're not only impacting people directly, in the work that we do, but we want to continue to bring more community members to this work, identify partners that maybe are missing from the table, and really kind of inspire the community to get involved with this work. Again, we kind of shared, we want to definitely be innovative as much as possible, and we want to move the community more towards action. It's easy for us to all share, what's not going well, but we need to bring people to the table to be solution focused. We do want to develop a common language and ways to measure the work that we do to track across the community organizations. So we talked about this earlier on with our leadership and steering group committees that, we all are doing so much work, and sometimes it is just more about finding that commonality theme. And we do have to identify really the reality of the work settings that we were all in, that there are certain things that, maybe I have access to working for a fairly bigger system that maybe another organization doesn't. And so for me, one of the tough things is figuring out, how do you really measure the work that you do to show that impact? And we all know that that is so, so important to be able to keep people invested in the work that we do. And so we do have to come up with what that common language and common measurements are, and be respectful for where people are currently at with the work that they're doing, and all of that. So I hope that makes sense. I may not have articulated that well, but I think of ways of capturing data, and there are some really good systems out there technology wise. But if, a certain community organization cannot afford that, or doesn't have the bandwidth for that with, even people to input the data, then, they may already feel like they're kind of left behind. So that's a big important value for me to really make sure that we focus on going forward. Anybody that's ever worked in any kind of case management or just, service directed work, sometimes we're missing that gap of really closing the loop of, I referred somebody on to a certain program, but I don't know how they did, or I don't know if they actually, the family engaged or the child engaged in those services. So how do we close that loop in case management to make sure that the follow-up is, there's connection between all of the services recommended, that there's follow-up going on, and that we can work with each other to share our successes and potentially come back and say, this is where a gap was. Obviously, it's extremely, extremely important to focus on the whole individual. That is just, my background is social work, and that's the first thing we're taught, is to look at the person in their environment. And so we have to make sure that we're really challenging each other to make sure that we're focusing on every part of that individual that we can possibly impact. And lastly, engaging in culturally sensitive practices. And even though this one's listed last, this is extremely, extremely important. We still have plenty of people in our community and in our county that we need to be able to help them access the services that they need, whether that's in their preferred language, or whether that's in a safe space to be able to go and access services. So I hope that you guys will take some time to look at those goals that we have. We've really thought those out very extensively, and there's been a lot of people who've impacted that. So I would maybe just kind of have you pause and take a look at that and see if there's anything that, you feel like maybe we am not focusing on, or if you feel like this is work that you can get behind. hopefully it resonates with you. Okay. All right, so I definitely would challenge you to go ahead and, take a look at this even after the meeting. Like Michelle said, we'll share this with you, and feel free to reach out to us for that. So hopefully we kind of gave you a little bit of the background from the history to where we're currently at and where we hope to go in the future. I would like to be able to kind of pass off the baton here today now to share, to let Jamie talk about the extremely important work of making sure that we have people representing us with lived experience. Jamie?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to also ask for a little bit of grace. We are having our children's mental health celebration today, and my office has about 45 more people than it ever has had in it before, and it's loud. So if you hear a lot of noise in the background, we are just a busy bunch of bees today. So including those with lived experience, one of the things we have focused our work on, Families Care has had a statewide family-run network grant through SAMHSA for the last several years. And in that grant, part of the goal of that grant was to build up individuals with lived experience in a way that they could participate in leadership roles. And so it's been a big passion for me, not just in the work that we do here at Families Care, but across the systems, and how important it is for those people to have a voice at the table. I think we have moved in the time that I've been engaged in this work. I've seen that lots and lots of us are interested in hearing from people with lived experience. We want to, have the feedback. We want to know what's helpful for them, what's not been helpful. We do surveys and things like that to measure the impact that we're making. The shift that I'm hoping we can start looking at, though, is rather than getting the feedback, having it inform the work that we're doing and then bringing it back to them for review or to try again. I'm, I guess, encouraging for a change in including those with lived experience to participate in the co-design of the processes and the systems and the work that we're doing. I am often sitting on these committees as the token lived experience, as the person that gets to participate in that. But really, to make an impact for people, we need to not just hear from the people, but also, include them in the processes that we're working on. So that's a big piece of, including, looking back at those things that Abby had just gone through, what would we be proud of accomplishing in a year, to look at that list and make sure that we're including those with lived experience in those committees and those decision-making bodies, not just co-designing, but also having that shared power for those that are utilizing these systems is how we're going to make a lasting impact. So I know we have talked a little bit about the youth and adolescent work group, part of the flower petal, and how to engage those with lived experience in that work. But that's another piece of this that we're working toward. So anything else, I guess, any questions about that or anything else that you guys would like to see as we're working toward including those with lived experience in the work that we're doing? All right. Okay, so I think that's the last of my slides. Anything else we need to include?
Thanks, Jamie. I love that. I think it's so important. Miss Jamie always says the word co-design, and that really hit me the other day. I wrote informed again on something, and she said, hey, I think we should really use the word co-design. So I just really value, Jamie, your input and others on the call that hold that true, that we want people with lived experience to co-design, to be in this process with us, not just inform the work. You know, we want to take it that step forward farther towards collective impact and having people with lived experience really share in the process with us. So thank you, Jamie. I'm going to take us back to this flower petal, as we've been calling it. Again, the reason that some of the newer partners are on the call today is because we're looking at launching a conversation, a work group conversation next week at our collaborative meeting to do with the children, youth, and adolescents. So I just wanted you guys to see this bigger picture again and be able to look at the impact statements, because this is really the focus of the work, right? We keep seeing these two impacts, these threads throughout all the conversations that we have at community partners within the last few years. We want to increase access to information, resources, trainings, programs, and services, and prevent persons, children, youth, adolescents, older adults, et cetera, from entering or re-entering the system. So I just wanted to bring this back kind of into your minds as we move forward to the next part of the conversation, which Miss Denise is going to help us as we look at some of the collaborative leadership roles.
Thank you, Michelle. So I think hopefully each of you are seeing yourself in one of those flower petals. For instance, I'm going to pick a little bit on Alexandra Dillon. As you're working with both Rooted in Relationships and also with the early childhood collaborative and the communities for kids, that work is happening in that flower petal. So hopefully you're all kind of seeing where you where your work exists. And then you're also seeing how your work might connect to how you're reaching out to vulnerable populations, or how your work might be reaching into behavioral health strategies or access issues as well. So I wanted to start there, and thank you for bringing us back to that, Michelle. So I'm thinking the next slide, hopefully the staff has up for you, is really the meat of what we wanted to come together and ask all of you. So much of the conversation we've had so far is just an orientation, which just, I know some of you have heard this before, but we have noticed the more we talk about it, the more it just helps solidify our thinking and helps us, sorry, patience with me while I'm driving, helps us begin to see how a further collaborative or collective impact can really start to come together for us. So to start with, some of you have been invited to this meeting specifically to help us at the large collaborative meeting next Wednesday. So you know who you are, I do believe. We have mentioned to you our interest in having you co-lead that meeting. And the reason we want to invite more volunteers to be those leaders, as what you may have seen in the past from the staff, is that we have become those leaders in many ways. And so one of the things the staff has shared with the board and the steering committee, which today is the steering committee meeting, our challenge as staff is we hear so much great information. We hear about all the great programs, we hear about all the great resources, we hear about the gaps, we can identify the gaps, but when we hear about them, they all land on our desk and they stay there. And then we're trying to figure out how to push that back out into the community. And we're like, how do we lift up the conversations we hear every day so that more people can hear that? And so that's the purpose of next week's meeting. We want to host the meeting for the collaborative next week just to talk about resources in the area of children, in adolescents, and in youth. And so that's why we've invited you to the meeting. So we have spent some time, the board, this steering committee, and when I say the board, I mean the Buffalo County Community Partners Board of Directors, as well as the steering committee, which you're sitting on the steering committee right now, led by Abby and Jamie. And now we're asking you to lead a work group, which is that children and youth flower petal. So when you think about leading that work group, there's 4 job duties or maybe job descriptions that we have proposed. The first one is the collaborative leader. And the more I've been thinking about that as I've been hearing everybody talking, I think actually all 4 of these positions are collaborative leaders. And within that collaborative leadership, somebody's facilitating the meeting, which is that first level. And so we've identified Jason Owen, who was not able to join us today, and Nicole Hirsch, and Nicole's on the call. So if Nicole accepted our invite today to lead the facilitation part of the next meeting, her role would be to be facilitating the conversation like Abby is doing today. What are we talking? What's in front of us? What's the agenda? How are we getting through the content? Is everybody being heard? Just facilitating that process. The next role would be a collaborative leader who's doing recording. And I believe, is it Chandra Diaz that we've invited to the meeting today to talk about how can Chandra be really listening for those key elements of gaps, those resources, and helping us as staff be able to compile that information to be shared with others. So what does that look like as we're hearing it? How do we communicate that clearly back out to others in the community? And so that was one of the roles we invited Chandra to come to the table and to consider. Then the next role is recorder. Am I still on track? I'm sorry, I'm trying to drive and remember what we have. Am I on track, Michelle?
You're on track. Strategist is next.
Strategist is next. Thank you. That helps me. So for strategy, I believe we have Alexandra Dillon. Sorry, Alexandra, it's coming back to me. I'm trying to do all this from memory. So Alexandra, what we have invited you to consider in this role is connections. What are the connections we're not seeing, or what are the connections we're hearing? Who are the people and the organizations and the programs and the resources that need to be connected? And you're not putting all of this on your shoulders. You're just listening to help inform others and help to guide the next meeting's agenda, right? It's not like we're asking you to spend hours and hours of connecting people, but more of like that broad brushstroke. Like I heard a lot from it. Let's say we heard a lot of resources at the next meeting that relate to adolescence. And you might say, I wish we would have had more young adults who are aging out of the system to have a better understanding of the situations that they see. And the same thing could be said about early childhood. We really needed more voices there about early childhood. Or here's a resource that I think this group needs to connect to. So that's kind of what we're encouraging Alexandra to consider. And then the last one is, help me, Michelle.
Yes, the host, Denise.
Host, Dulce.
Mm-hmm.
So Dulce, making sure we have the right people at the table. You know, are people representing vulnerable populations? Is that lived experience at the table? You have a great partner there with Jamie, who just finished speaking. How do we ensure we have the right people at the table? We're inviting people. We're welcoming, like you would be a host in your own home. How do we welcome people? Do we need to be on site versus Zoom? Just those kinds of to be paying attention to as a facilitative leader. So you might be asking, so what's the staff doing while all of this volunteer elements are happening? And so the thing that the staff really want to focus on is producing quality minutes for all of you, trying to capture as much information as we can so that you as facilitative leaders in those roles can do the work that you would like to see happen in the community, as well as technical assistance. So if Dulce were to call up one of us and say, hey, I really think we're missing this segment of people from the faith community. How can we bring in orientation and invite more faith people to the community? We could talk about who those individuals would be. We could set up an orientation process at the staff level and help bring those individuals into the next collaborative meeting. And then I know I'm missing one role, Michelle.
You got them, Dee.
Did I?
The rest
Okay.
was just, yeah, technical assistance from staff. And I would just add to, you know, the community partner staff, we're your biggest cheerleaders. We're going to be here to help and support an agenda plan and kind of do those behind the scenes things. But we really just want these leaders to be able to lift up the work that you're already doing. You know, like Denise said, that you're already seen in the community. I think that's like my biggest ask of a leader is to be able to just be that liaison and have that voice, because the partner staff, you know, we're not in the trenches, if you will, doing the work. So I think that's why it's so important for me to have the voices of you all as leadership.
So let's start with maybe Nicole. What do you think? Is this a role that you would be willing to accept? And what questions do you have for us?
Yeah, I would be willing to take that on. I think I just maybe need a little more clarification on like facilitating the meeting, like what would agenda items be, things like that, to be able to kind of move things forward.
Fair enough. I'm going to keep going down the list and we'll come back and answer that question. Michelle and Matt, can you kind of keep a list of those things we need to come back to? Next on the list, I think, is Chandra. Are you willing to accept our invitation to lead this part of the work?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and I'm sure you probably have questions too, so we'll come back to that. Alexandra, are you willing to accept?
What a great sales job you guys have done. Yes, I'll take it.
Thank you, Alexandra. I know you kind of feel like you're like, what, I have no option to say no, but we are here for you. So thank you for considering that. And Dulce.
Yes, I just the same. I think I would need a little bit more of like the guidance and just like the expectations, but I am willing to take that role. And for the I guess the title, it would be through ESU 9 rather than 10. So just a clarification. And it would be migrant project coordinator. So
Thank you very much, Dulce. All right, well, let's talk about what questions you ladies have. I do believe Jason Owen will step in and help too, Nicole. He just couldn't get away. I think today's the last day of school, so it was going to be really challenging for him to get together with us today. So the agenda, what we think it will look like, and we've just preliminarily talked about this. It will look a lot like what Abby just shared with all of you. You know, this is the history. This is how we've gotten to where we are today. This is collective impact. This is results-based accountability. And then we really want to promote to the community that we're inviting them to join us for this meeting to share resources. So we think most of the conversation will be about people sharing resources, just to start building the connections between early childhood and all the way to young adults. We talked about possibly having someone be a timer, so everybody gets 1 minute to share a resource, just to keep it moving throughout the meeting, and really have the meeting focused again just on resources that are available. And we think there'll be some natural connections then with all the people who are attending, that maybe somebody in early childhood will connect with a resource for an adolescent that they didn't know was available. That's our preliminary thinking. So I'll kind of stop there and let you ask more questions or clarify.
No, I think that was actually very helpful. I know there's like I can't remember the name of it. There's a community meeting that a lot of agencies kind of already go to.
is it the community connection?
Yes, thank you, Dulce. So I know they do a lot of sharing of resources at that meeting. I mean, it's been quite a few years since I've attended one myself. But if anybody else has attended that, is that kind of what that would look like then, as far as like sharing them resources and you're just having people collaborate and share information?
Yes, I agree. That would be what it would look like on a larger scale of children all the way to young adults. I would say possibly in a phase 1 environment, because we may want to move beyond just being the resource sharing, but also making connections and then identifying and filling those gaps.
I would agree, Denise. I think, and Nicole, I do think that's a good place to start, and that will be a good way for us to network and potentially bring in people who aren't at the table. But then I would like to see it challenged more, more in-depth conversation after that.
Any additional questions or thoughts? You can challenge us too if you feel like there's another way to approach this. We're looking at just building relationships to start with, because we're assuming that we don't have a lot of connections between early childhood conversations and adolescent conversations and young adult and youth conversations in the community.
Frequency wise, are we thinking like come together once a month?
The board and the steering committee, I should just say the steering committee. The steering committee has been setting aside this monthly collaborative meeting, and they've decided that space can be reserved for this work group to get started as a pilot.
Okay.
So that meeting would occur monthly on the last Wednesday or the fourth Wednesday of the month at 12:30, I believe. Am I right, Matt and Michelle?
Yes, that is right.
We do have funding to do in-person meetings. So if there is a point where we think a longer meeting in person would be helpful, we do have funding for space and food and things like that as well.
I'd like to encourage us to think about in the beginning meeting in person. I would love.
I would echo that as well.
The four of us that are new recruits to maybe just have lunch together.
That is a great idea. This steering committee meeting has been kind of set aside for the planning of the collaborative meeting. And we have been talking about taking this meeting to an in-person meeting. And we can also do a luncheon at the office or something for all of you, or breakfast, whatever might work as well. That's definitely a possibility. The steering committee meetings are, I think, the third Thursday. Is that what we're on right now at 10 o'clock? And they've been designed to help build the agenda and prepare information for the next collaborative meeting. Other thoughts or questions? We anticipated the full meeting would be next Wednesday, but am I hearing that you might need some time to sit down face to face before we do that?
I think that would be my preference. At least us four get together.
I would be open for that.
Abby and Jamie, does that sound okay if we postpone next week's meeting until we can pull our agenda together and help support and orient our new leaders?
I think so. I know I needed that too when I jumped into some of this, so I can appreciate that.
And maybe we could meet in that time slot. I already have it blocked off. I don't know if that would work for others, but
Yes, that's a great idea. So we could do a lunch at the office on next Wednesday at 12:30 in preparation for a June, Matt or Michelle, you might have to drop the date in there, a June collaborative meeting. That will give us a little bit more time for communication as well.
perfect. Thank you.
Abby, I'm going to hand it back to you because you probably can see people's faces and engage the group a little bit better than I can at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna move back to my car because I'm having a hard time hearing, but all right, how are we feeling with what we've talked about so far today? You feel like you've had a little bit of a foundation provided? Do you need more information? I think it's great hearing that we want to meet in person next week. What else?
Okay, I'm going to pick on Jamie. Jamie and I have been chatting a little bit about thinking about somebody on the leadership team, holding a spot on the leadership team of the work group for someone with lived experience. I think that's a really great idea, Jamie, and I don't know if you want to expand. And then Sarah McNeil had put in a great comment in the chat a while back, and sorry, we kind of skipped over it, but Sarah, you kind of had thoughts about maybe a rotation of is someone with lived experience coming to the meetings. I wasn't sure if you wanted to have a little discussion on that.
Yes, the way I was thinking about that is because you all have access to people who have used the resources recently, have collaborated just by necessity with a lot of the organizations at once. Once they do reach a point of stability, not only will they have a recent concept of how the resources are working or not working, but they'll be getting their feet strong enough to hold up whoever's behind them. So that would be a good voice to have in the conversation because they have recent knowledge. They've worked with all of the groups, or at least some of the groups, multifacetedly. And yeah, I think that voice would be very valuable.
Well, and the reason I was chatting with Michelle is because I never know quite sure which meeting to bring what up in. So I just wanted to make sure, like, is this the place? And so she called me out, and so I guess it is. But I just wonder, maybe we could look at in that leadership structure, having a piece of it be lived experience. So looking at the youth and child and youth, what would be the best, what kind of a fit do we want for that lived experience? Do we want someone who maybe has lived experience as a youth working in the different systems? Do we want a parent? Like, what would that look like for this group? Any thoughts on that?
So because I think that we have the same idea on it, of getting someone in here with a voice, I think that could either be done on a permanent or rotational basis, depending on how their healing process, where they are in their healing process. And because I don't work 40 hours a week directly with these groups, I'm sure that you all would have a much better idea of how to gauge that and how to get their involvement.
Well, and I haven't talked with her yet. I invited her to the child and youth meeting. I haven't talked with her about the leadership role, but I have a transitional age youth peer support specialist. The idea of a peer supporter is that we have lived experience with the people that we are supporting. So her role is to work with youth between the ages of 16 and 26 who are experiencing difficulties or challenges in that transition time of life with their mental or behavioral health, education, all of those life domains. So she has lived experience of her own. She's working with youth currently that are experiencing challenges in that time frame. She might be a good fit as someone who has worked through the systems and is now supporting others in doing that. It's not the only option. There's lots and lots of different people, but I think she would be willing to participate in that role and share what she's learning from the youth that she's working with and what she's learned with her own experience. I'm happy to invite her to that meeting next week if we want to, or if anybody else has any other ideas about, like I said, a parent might be willing to do that too, or, or maybe both. Maybe we need a parent and a youth that would participate in that.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of having both, because I think that they do have different experiences and different perceptions, and I think it would be nice to have their voice both at the table.
Yeah, I would agree too.
I agree too. However, from my experience, and I don't know if it's based on the population that I work with, but youth sometimes struggle more speaking up. So even if that youth, whoever you invite or somebody invites, even if they don't speak up, that's like that first meeting to be able to listen to what it's like and what the expectation is, to make it like an easier transition rather than just putting that youth on the spot. I mean, it just depends on the youth, but just an idea.
For sure.
This is Abby. I'm just going to point out a challenge I'm having, just kind of a listening, is that this is a very big population of people. I mean, we have, we are potentially impacting early childhood, babies, infants, all the way up to whatever age we really identify. And so I think it's hard to pinpoint certain people, because I do think it's hard. You want all different populations represented. But I don't know if anybody else is struggling with that.
It's slightly overwhelming, to be honest. But
well, and I think the benefit to this leadership group is that, like, you guys are setting the pace and setting the tone. Who we have at the table with you on that committee is who's informing, and working together for that. So, having different areas represented on the leadership team means that we can then invite people from different areas to those meetings and to the work. So it is an overwhelming age range. It's a lifespan right there, but
yeah,
this is, I think it's such a great first step to have such a diverse group of leaders that can bring in the participants to go with. So.
Jamie, I guess if you're looking for an answer about your gal, I would definitely support inviting her to our meeting next week.
All right. She's pretty dynamic. I think you guys will enjoy her.
Okay. Is there, we're actually running pretty ahead of schedule, which is nice. I feel like we've had a pretty good conversation. Is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about while we're together in this space? I think definitely we're putting out the challenge there to really be thinking about partners that you would like to have at the table, or at least help like Jamie says, co-design, or maybe inform the work that we're doing. Again, I mean, the purpose of the meeting is really to provide that space for partners to meet and learn about, prevention resources, trainings from birth to young adults, really. So, and to try to help focus on some of those complex social needs or social problems maybe that we've identified in the county. So. Okay. Well, I feel like we might all be in thought processing mode right now, the way I'm gauging. I don't want to be pushy and try to, force more conversation. I think, now is kind of a good time potentially to pause and just let people kind of mull over everything we've shared. I just want to make sure, staff that are on the call, I just want to make sure I haven't forgotten any other important pieces that we want to share with the team. Can you think of anything? I'm obviously a little distracted today.
Yeah, I think we're all distracted a little bit today. Abby, thank you so much for facilitating, and you too, Jamie. The thing with Zoom is it's convenient for us to do it while we're going about our days and other activities. So thank you for making that commitment today. And for those of you who just accepted this leadership piece, thank you so very much. We are so grateful. The staff is so excited to have more people watching and listening and helping to guide this community to truly get to collective impact. We need more ears and eyes in this work. And thank you so much for making that commitment. And you guys are experts in your field. And the lived experience piece is so important. I know Jamie and I have had conversations about how do we begin to put lived experience ahead of the work that we're doing versus an afterthought. And I think we're going to get there with more conversations. So, and thank you for the home team for helping me out. I drove all over Omaha because I kept missing my turn every time I started to talk. So thank you for hanging in there with me. We went downtown and we come back to 120th Street. So we finally got here. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your patience. A great meeting. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having lunch with all of you next week. And for those of you, the others on the call, thank you so much, because I know you've been doing heavy lifting as well. So thank you. Have a great Thursday.
Yes. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. See you next week.
Mateo, I took a stab at our next steps here, but I didn't quite get it before everyone jumped off.
Yeah, I was going to mention it, but Denise beat me to the unmute. But yes, what I have is I can move the actual, work group meeting to June 22nd. And then we can get a calendar invite for like the leadership meeting to those new folks, and obviously like Abby and Jamie and anyone else who could make it. And then I'm still recording.
Sorry, I'll